So my name is Vicki Osborne. As Todd said, I'm the Director of Emergency Management for a really cool acronym known as We Rock, woo, which is known as the Water Emergency Response Organization of Orange County. I've been there since 2020. I got there about 4 weeks before COVID hit, so learned a lot very quickly. Prior to that, I worked 25 years for the Orange County Sheriff's Department. I was the Assistant Manager for Emergency Manager for the County of Orange, underneath that umbrella. So I've been around for a lot of disasters, and unfortunately, in California, we are disaster rich. I think what we really need to take a look at when it comes to emergency preparedness nowadays is community. A lot of times I've seen people say the government will come. I hate to say it, but there's a lot more of us, the community member, than there is the government employee. So it's very important for when we talk about emergency preparedness that we really start, especially for our homeowners association, use some of the tools that are available. We have programs such as the community emergency response teams and different avenues that we can help our community prepare a little better. In turn, by us doing that, that helps our fire partners, because if we do what we're supposed to do and be prepared to leave, ready, set, go, I won't steal your thunder, promise, that makes their job that much easier. I have been around where I've had to go hug the homeowner after the fire, then the rains have followed, and then the two-story mud that goes through their home completely destroying it. I've had to hug that resident saying, I'm sorry you lost your home. So that's where we need to turn what emergency preparedness is. It's not just preparedness, but it's about being ready, and then it's also about recovery, because that's also part of the emergency disaster also. And we'll talk more about that. Here you go, Juan.
Thanks, Vicki. And I've actually sat in on a few presentations by Vicki out in the Canyon area, so it's great stuff. So my name is Juan Huerta. I'm a Senior Fire Prevention Specialist with the Orange County Fire Authority. I'm in the Community Wildfire Mitigation section. We actually go out and we do the vegetation inspections in those areas in the very high, both fuel modification as well as defensible space. As Vicki mentioned, we do have the Ready, Set, Go program. Typically we focus on the ready, which is the home hardening and vegetation maintenance, but part of that is also the set and go, where residents need to start taking some responsibility as far as getting prepared for an emergency. It doesn't necessarily have to be a wildfire, it could be an earthquake or another natural disaster. So it's really a situation where by doing these outreaches, we're hopefully reaching residents where we can provide that information. We do have a booth back there, so definitely I recommend if you have questions, you can come back there and talk with us. But the set is having an evacuation plan, having a reunification plan, and also exercising that plan. During a stressful event such as an emergency, you want to make sure that you've practiced that plan, because when it does happen, it's not a matter of if, but when it does happen, you have exercised that plan. So thank you all. Pass it to Jack.
Hi everybody, I'm Jack Rush. I'm Vice President of Operations for O'Connell Landscape, and I've worked for that company for about 33 years now. Actually, I'm a resident of Laguna Niguel, and what's interesting, my house is just up the hill from the park here, and the day that fire came, I was working in my office, and I kept hearing fire engine after fire engine after fire engine, and I go to my wife, what's going on here? I look out the front door, and that whole hillside's on fire. I used to actually work on that project. I'm very familiar with the brush management in that area, and it's a very challenging steep slope area. Some of the things that we as contractors are running across, which are challenges, is homeowner associations, when they go and provide us with bids to bid their projects. It's very, very important that we get, if possible, a fuel modification plan with that set of specifications. Or if you have very good maps, because a lot of times we are given pieces of paper that have been photocopied 85 million times, and we're going out to a site trying to put numbers to that to take care of your fuel modification area. And when it comes down to it, if we don't have accurate information, we're not giving you accurate numbers for your budgets. So that's something you guys should look very closely at. I walked firsthand with one in many projects, Foothill Ranch out in eastern part of the county here, and it's burned 3 times, I think, out there.
About every 10 years.
Yeah, about every 10 years. And fortunately, we've gotten the brush management fuel mod done so that the houses have been somewhat safe, knock on wood. So I'll pass it on to Mike.
Hi, my name is Mike Sweeney. I'm a principal of Land Concern. We're landscape architects.
I've been in this business about 45 years, and my emphasis has been on master plan communities, not only here in Orange County, but over the hill and the Inland Empire as well. And I have been the lead landscape architect for Rancho Mission Viejo for about 45 years. Started Rancho Santa Margarita all the way to today and the new developments they're doing out there. The primary thing that I have found is it's who you align with, the team that you bring to your clients that helps you make a successful landscape. I've met with many HOAs, a lot of people very much set in their ways, not open to new ideas, and things are changing. For our industry, they've changed drastically. I mean, I worked on Rancho Miguel back in my 20s, and what we did there versus what we have today is so much different. The other thing, probably the most valuable thing I've learned is when I go out on a project and I begin, I find the people that have the boots on the ground. The people that are in the field, they know what's going on. They have given me invaluable information. I've walked with Juan on many of the projects out on the ranch. Him and I have talked about plant material, what's working, what isn't, what burns. Why you want everything 2 feet under? That really, what's my biggest challenge? Juan at the Orange County Fire Authority. Right now, and I say that jokingly, but it is, along with the, obviously the drought. It's become very difficult to landscape major landscape areas within the county now. But we continue to meet that challenge. Again, it's all about the team we pull together to make sure that we come across with a successful landscape.
Hi everybody, my name is Adrian Tasso. I'm with Molten Miguel Water District. Been there a little over 22 years. I'm the Assistant Director of Operations. So emergency preparedness from a field point of view, from a water district point of view, typically means having the proper tools, resources, and training. And as I've been listening to people from homeowners associations, the important takeaway is just to use your resources around you. You don't have to make it up as you go. For us, after the coastal fire, we received 6 to 8 calls from different homeowners associations who just wanted to know, do the hydrants in our neighborhood, do they operate properly? When's the last time our infrastructure was maintained? And those are easy questions for us to answer, but it may be a long conversation during an HOA meeting where it doesn't have to be. So just one of my takeaways from this is just use the resources you have, know who to call, utilize the fire authority if you have questions on landscape, defensible space, and also just day to day, if you manage a large HOA or a small HOA, does it make sense if you have one vendor, maybe to have a backup if there's a big wind event? What would happen if a tree fell on a vehicle? Who do you call? Do you have a backup? Because that kind of stuff does happen, and it kind of makes it difficult during an emergency to try to kind of sort it all out.
Vicki, can you provide an example where emergency preparedness has actually paid off?
Absolutely. So I'll start by saying, in my role now with We Rock, one of my jobs is to really support all our water, wastewater agencies. There's 36 of them here within the county. So that's my main focus, has to do with infrastructure, making sure that communications, coordination, collaboration. We are very lucky here in Orange County to say that our water, wastewater agencies and districts work together. They provide assistance to each other. If they need something, they will step up and help. So that's a very important for you all to know is how well we all work together. In regards to talking about landscape fire suppression, homeowners association making a difference. So I hate to say it, but if you really take a hard look at where do we mostly see fires here in Orange County burn? In open space, up in our canyon area, our nice still open space area, Silverado, Santiago, Majestica, those canyons. And I hate to say that most people learn about disaster preparedness when something actually happens to them. And that has happened to the canyon folks over the years. They actually created their own homeowners association. That's technically what it is, called the Inner Canyon League. Anyone here know when or why that was created? I think we need new batteries. So that was actually created in the 1960s. It's working. Is it working? It's working now. Just don't hold it too close. Just don't hold it. Thank you, Director Cave. Anyone remember the great flooding that we had back in the 1960s? So the canyons were hit hard, 4 people died, and they decided that emergency preparedness was important for them to band together as a homeowners association, and that's how that was created. Some of their subsets they did was providing grants. Some of the stuff they did was disaster preparedness. I didn't hold it too close. Providing disaster preparedness. When a new person would move into the homeowners association, someone would go greet them, explain to them, welcome to the canyons, and just so you know, the following disasters has now put your life at risk. But it was an honest conversation that they had. 2007 was probably one of the worst fires that we've seen hit Orange County out in that canyon area. This marks the 15th anniversary on October 27th. And I can tell you those residents still get together and talk about what happened then and how can we continue to be safe in the future. That's success. They have brought in 2016 as part of the normal fire suppression or fire changes to continue on being successful. They have what's known as chipper days. Let's cut down the dead trees. Of course, we get permission first from the right environmental folks. We clear the different creek beds and streams. We've actually brought in Team Rubicon before to help them. And the important part of doing that is that we continue to make sure that we try to harden the best we can. Is any home 100% fireproof? No. But if we do everything that's possible, those are success stories. That helps not just your home if you own it, but also your neighbor's home as well. I'll do one quick personal story. I planted a palm tree. My dad died that year. I just cut down the palm tree because that's nothing but a big matchstick. You're welcome, one. But but it's stuff like that, because I know that my palm tree, the way it hangs over, also then impacts my neighbor. So it comes back to that community, neighbor helping neighbor, educating and sharing with neighbors at the same time. That success is when we do that. And I challenge each one of you to come up and ask me a question at the end of today in regards on how your homeowner association can help your fellow neighbors.
Thank you, Vicki. Next question, Mike, is for you. How do you work with a client to design a fire-resilient landscape?
So I mentioned the team. The team becomes critical. And when I say team, there's a number of individuals, some of them are actually here today, that I work with when we approach a project. And it's their specialties. You've got irrigation, you've got soils, you've got maintenance, you've got installation, you've got the landscape architect. And it's important that if you can take anything away today, because this is the number one thing that's overlooked, is when you're going to start a new project, find out what kind of soils you're working with. All the great plant palettes that are passed out throughout the county, I think that's the number one thing that I see that it's not in a column. What is your soil? Because all plants don't work everywhere. And that becomes critical. The second thing is, where are you as far as climate? What you're doing here in Laguna Niguel versus what you're doing in Rancho Santa Margarita is night and day as far as climate. So to create a successful landscape, and you need to understand those elements. Your irrigation consultant is probably the most valuable person that you can bring in. But that's not a landscape architect, that's an irrigation consultant. But he's got to be able to work hand in hand with the person that's doing your planting. He's got to understand what you're planting and where, so he can irrigate it correctly so that you end up with a long-term successful project. Those are things that in my career, when I turned about 30, I realized, I'm pretty successful and I'm a pretty bright guy, but there's some really smart people around me, a lot smarter than me, and I started aligning myself with them and started suggesting, as we started a project, hey, can I bring so-and-so in? I'd like you to meet this person, because as a team, we can sit down and guarantee a successful landscape. Scale, how big is your project? A lot of times you're not developing gardens, you're developing a massive landscape, and a lot of times the scale is not taken into place. How long is the plant material going to last? And I think probably the number one thing, and I go back to the guy on the boots in the ground. So O'Connell Landscape, we do a ton of work with out on the ranch. And the most valuable person to me is a guy by the name of Cody. Cody's the guy that's in the truck every day in the field and sees what's going on and what's making it and not making it. Those are the guys that I hunt out. Those are the guys I like to bring in on the team, because they have the most valuable information, and we stop wasting money on things that just aren't going to last. So again, it's critical, the team. I know, you know, with the HOAs, it's all about budget. In walks a group of 5 people, the numbers are already running in your head, but I can't stress enough that that's probably the most important money you could spend. And I'm not here to sell myself today. I've got more than enough work to keep me busy, but it's just my suggestion over the years of what I've seen to get you a successful landscape is make sure you've got a good, strong team, and that the people that sit on your board are open to listening to what they have to say, because things, like I mentioned before, things have changed dramatically in our industry, and what works up in Irvine and has been planted in Irvine for over 30 years, we can't do down here anymore. So again, it's all about the team.
Thank you. One more question? One, what are some of the most common threats to property you observe in professionally landscape?
Sure. Before I answer that question, I kind of want to add to what Mike said. So OCFA tries as best as we can to partner with all of our HOAs, whether it's HOA board members, but also with the landscape contractors. Many times what I do is, again, to bring up Cody, I've had many conversations with him as far as what plant material is working out there. Because the last thing we want to do is continually approve these plant species if they're not doing well or they're becoming challenging out in the slope areas. We know that with the rising costs of essentially every type of service, the last thing we want to do is approve plants that are going to become troublesome for our HOAs and potentially increase their dues. So it's definitely something that OCFA is looking at when we're reviewing our field mod plans for these new developments. Now, to answer the question, it's really boils down to maintenance. There aren't very many new developments, especially here in Laguna Niguel. It really becomes just general maintenance. Now, the one thing is that whether or not your community is located in a very high fire hazard severity zone, that's what's going to dictate whether or not OCFA is actually doing the field modification inspections and defensible space inspections. So it just boils down to the maintenance. One of the biggest challenges I think HOAs are facing now is the removal of the acacia redolence. That's kind of a thorn in my side, as well as I'm sure many landscapers throughout Southern California. It was the plan of choice years ago by developers that we're having to face now. So all of the areas where the coastal fire spotted, everything that's on the western side, even on the western side of Pacific Island Drive, which was 1,000 feet away from the flame front, it was the acacia redolence that ignited from those embers. So it's really something that OCFA is focusing on, making sure that our slopes are going to be in conformance with defensible space requirements or the field mod. Now, if it is a situation where an HOA is going to do a large demo work, definitely the first step is reaching out to your city, asking them what the requirements are for doing a large-scale vegetation removal or replanting. Because the city may have a landscape design that they are looking for, so that should be your first step. Then you work closely with your landscape company, potentially your consultant company, to identify what plant material would be best on that slope. And to add to what Mike said, it's soil type, slope aspect, topography, but it's also using fire-resistant material that's going to be low maintenance in the future. So.
Would you say design or maintenance is more important for fire prevention?
I think they go hand in hand because really you don't want to just perform the maintenance one time and then be faced with that similar problem 5 years down the road because of the plant material chosen didn't necessarily mitigate that situation. So it's really OCFA, the landscape company, their HOAs trying to work together to come up with a solution that's going to be long-term.
I just wanted to add one thing. The acacia, which is the target. I worked in Rancho Niguel when I was a much younger man. It was the only shrub we could get to grow in the soils here. The soils here are a real challenge, high boron, salts and all that. So if you're in this area and you're getting ready, and I just wanted to emphasize it, to re-landscape, please keep that in mind. I understand the concerns about the acacia, and Juan and I have talked a lot about it. But as you go to what is the alternative, that's going to become a critical process. we went through a lot of plants as we developed Rancho Niguel and just never made it. So keep that in mind.
May I?
Would you like to comment on trees? How many we could have, how the spacing?
It truly depends on when it was built. If you have a fuel modification plant, there may be some restrictions as far as tree species and spacing. If it's an existing community, if it has trees potentially that are on the OCFA current undesirable list, such as pines, eucalyptus, it's not so much the tree that's the hazard, it's the maintenance and the vegetative understory. So that's what we look at. You know, we have a saying where people tend to hug trees, but not shrubs. So it's really just the maintenance with the trees.
And just to tie on to that, the decisions that you make for some of this landscape that you put in, and we could talk hours about how it impacts the fire insurance and how that has even changed for our homeowners. So that's a big consideration impact you have to think about as you do some of this design, and especially the maintenance, because the maintenance impacts someone annually each and every time, if they can or cannot get their insurance.
Below our community on Pacific Island Drive, from the top down to Crown Valley, that area looks like it's flammable. Is there anything being done to mitigate potential for fire in that area?
So those areas are designated as open space areas. And the way that OCFA says that they're open space areas, they're non-structured lots, meaning we don't have any authority to enforce any type of vegetation maintenance. Now, the defensible space that's being done around those areas is the buffer between that open space and the homes in the community itself. So it's really a situation where that's kind of the beauty of Laguna Niguel, is these pocket open space areas where you're not just surrounded by homes, you have these open space areas that are native, that there is no requirement for any maintenance to be done. It really just becomes, is your community safe? Is your defensible space in compliance, as well as your fuel mod? And that should be enough to protect your home. Now, is that a guarantee? No. I can tell you with Niguel Summit and the work that they've been doing out in that Aliso Summit Trail, it was some great fuel mod work out there. It was just an unfortunate situation when the ember casts that were getting lopped in those homes. So,
Is there any low-hanging fruit that HOAs can perform that don't cost a lot of money that you guys typically see when you first walk up to a site that doesn't involve a major revamp?
You know, one thing from a maintenance contractor standpoint is when we're going to go bid these projects, like if you just look out this window right here and you look up at Kite Hill, you can see area that has been cleared by the current contractor. How do we know the boundary zone? So what I recommend is spending the money, maybe to have a surveyor go out to the site and put the different zone markings on the project, so that we as contractors, if we're going to go bid the project, can see, okay, that's zone B, that's zone C, that's zone D. These are different areas that in fuel modification, we're required to do different levels of maintenance. So it's really important and hard for us to put numbers to these areas when we're guessing. So that's something that, from my standpoint, can help us out.
and to answer your question, Todd, it's really, if we're saying low-hanging fruit, I don't want to say there should be low-hanging fruit, but the defensible space or the fuel mod work, that's, if you're in the very high, it's already a requirement. So it should be done on an annual basis, if not more frequently. Obviously, depending on the budget of the HOA, we understand that some HOAs are under more of an economic constraint, but also pushing out to the homeowners what each and every homeowner can do as far as retrofitting their home to make it that much harder for a ember to get inside of a home. Typically, the number one reason we lose homes in a wildfire isn't from the flame front, it's from embers getting inside the home. It's the ember intrusion. So it's really on homeowners to begin the process of retrofitting their home. On the OCFA website, I'm going to plug it, we have a home assessment tool where you can run through a battery of questions regarding the home construction as well as the vegetation in and around the home. At the end of that assessment, you'll be given a report. If you'd like, if you are in a city within OCFA's jurisdiction, you can also request an inspector to come out and walk you through that home assessment.
Are there any new technologies or different sprinkler heads people can can plug into their existing system that'll help?
Sure. So one of the things that's been tossed around, especially out in the canyon areas, was the exterior sprinklers. Now, when you're talking about exterior sprinklers, what you have to factor in, and I'm sure we're here with a lot of water district professionals, but what's the pressure on that water? Is it coming from the potable water source? Is it coming from recycled? How much water availability do I have? There's still a lot of research that needs to be done on whether or not how effective those sprinklers are. I know if you've got a wood shake roof, then definitely it'll help, but to what extent, I can't tell you.
Actually, we work at UC Irvine in the housing for the professors area, and at that particular project, we're using smart controllers, and what we did is we've dedicated certain stations on the outlying area of the project so that we can use our smart controllers, use our phones, and actually turn the irrigation system on should there be a fire in the area. And that's something that's really helped us out on saving time. Instead of sending guys out there, we know there's a fire in this particular area. We can go to our smartphone, hit that particular station, fire it up. And I know that UC Irvine has worked in conjunction with OCFA on this, and it's worked out pretty well for us.
Great, thank you everybody. We're out of time. If does anybody have any last questions before we go, but I'd like to give the panel a hand if we could. Thank you.